Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1358B, and today's date is August 18th, 2017, and the title of the episode is The Elite's Agenda is in Full Swing. What Happened to Common Sense? Now, before I get started, I have two announcements. There was no report on Thursday because my site, both of my sites, X22Report.com and NewsSentinel.com, they were being heavily attacked. They were brought down, and they were down for quite a while. I was able to bring X22Report.com back up. I was able to fix it. News Sentinel, that was damaged a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to redesign that site since it's down anyhow, and I needed to make it fixes anyhow. So that site is going to be coming up in a couple of days. And my second announcement is that I uploaded an interview with London Paul on X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. So you can go over there and you can see and listen to the interview. You can also go to my site, X22Report.com site, scroll down a little bit, you'll see it on the right-hand side. Or you can go to Steam It, it is on there, and you can watch the video there. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, we've been covering the Russian gate collusion hoax for quite a while now, and we realize, and if you notice, you really don't hear that much about it because the whole thing is completely fake. But there is a new development in the Russian gate investigation, and this might completely blast apart one of the biggest hoaxes in history. Representative Dana Rohrabacher has met with Julian Assange. This is the first U.S. congressman to do so, and returned with some spectacular news. He said that Julian Assange told him that he can prove the leaked Democratic Party documents he published during the last year's election did not come from Russia at all, and promised additional helpful information about the leaks in the near future. And of course, what does Assange want? He wants to be pardoned because he's stuck in an embassy and he wants to leave and he wants to be able to travel. So he's trying to make a deal, and he must, most likely, as we can see from all the leaks that he puts out there, he must have certain information of who exactly it was. Now, of course, in the past, we realized that we know who it was. We know exactly how this happened because from all the evidence and from everything that has been researched, we know that it was an inside job. And most likely all the evidence is pointing to Seth Rich. And this is why they're saying that he was murdered. And of course, what we're seeing right now is that Julian Assange wants to tell all, but he wants to be pardoned. And we'll have to see how this plays out as we move forward. Now, what's very interesting is that Debbie Wasserman Shultz, her ex-IT aide, well, Imran Awan, he was indicted on 4 counts, and so was his wife, and he was part of this whole entire scandal. And I wouldn't be surprised if this goes even further, because what we're seeing right now is that the American Center for Law and Justice, the ACLJ, received the following letter from the FBI regarding its Freedom of Information request for any documents related to the Clinton-Lynch tarmac meeting in June of 2016. Now, before, the FBI said, listen, we have no records whatsoever. We can't give you any type of response because there are just no records to be found. But what has been happening since that period of time where they said they couldn't find any record, the Department of Justice now, headed by Jeff Sessions, well, they've been providing numerous documents which include email traffic that has to do with Clinton, with Lynch, and now the FBI says, well, maybe we have some records, and we're going to have to search a little bit further. So what we'll do is we'll reopen the case to search those records, which is very interesting because their response before was that there was absolutely no records whatsoever. So they've been caught hiding the truth from the American people, and now the FBI, because there was proof that there were records, because the Department of Justice had email, which they got from where? The FBI. they have to reopen this now. So this whole thing has just been reopened. I mean, it's amazing when you look at this, and of course, through the alternative media and everyone out reporting on this saying, oh no, those people are crazy, this is not real, and all of a sudden you find out that, yeah, they were lying once again. We see now that the corporate media is out there saying that Bannon was fired. Well, actually, it looks like Bannon resigned around 2 weeks ago. But we can see that this is creating problems within the White House. It's creating hysteria with the corporate media, like, ooh, Bannon's out. But is this part of the strategy? Because think about this for a second. While Bannon was within the Trump administration, he really couldn't say anything. He had to stay quiet. But now that he's out and looks like he's might be working maybe for Breitbart or some other news organization, he might be able to actually tell everyone who is really working against Trump, his agenda, who are the individuals in the White House that are trying to push him out of the White House. So this might be an actual benefit to the Trump administration. Now, on the other side, we can see as Bannon is being pushed out, or he resigned and he decided to leave, there might be other problems within the White House because there are certain other individuals that are going to try to take control. Now, we can see that right now everything is very chaotic. The corporate media, they don't want to hear both sides to the story. They just want to talk about white supremacists. They just want to talk about Nazis. They just want to talk about how Trump is a racist. They don't care what he says, how many times he denounced what has happened out in Charlottesville. That makes no difference whatsoever. And we can see there's a lot of CEOs and other individuals saying, listen, we can't be around this president right now. And it looks like this has been completely set up, and this is part of the elite's plan. This is part of their agenda to attack him and try to remove him. Remember, the goal was always there to never allow Trump to finish his term. The goal by the elite, by the cabal, was always to remove him any way they possibly can. Remember, Republicans don't like him, Democrats don't like him, and the elite definitely do not like him. So we can see that CEO, the council that he created with these CEOs, they're basically going against him right now. We see that CNN, MSNBC, all the corporate media outlets, they're out there and they're just saying race, white supremacists, Nazis. They're just continually going on and on and on about this. And then you have different government officials out there saying that we need to get rid of all the statues. We need to erase the Confederate names. We need to erase the entire history of the United States. I mean, part of it. Now, of course, burning books, destroying statues, getting rid of all this stuff doesn't get rid of it. Yeah, you might be able to hide it, but it doesn't remove the history. I mean, think about what they're doing. I mean, has common sense completely left the American people? I mean, there's still people with common sense, but if you listen to everyone, nobody wants to have a rational discussion, and this is part of the elite's plan. They want the tension. They want both sides to fight against each other. We as a people, we need to come together, not fight each other. We need to point our finger at the real enemy. But they don't want this to happen, and this is why they're continually pushing these ideas. Pelosi is out there saying that we need to get rid of all the Confederate statues in the Capitol, which is amazing. We already have Representative Steve Cohen. Well, he is basically introducing articles of impeachment. Now, this has happened before with Alan Green and others, where they submitted, documents of impeachment. And we can see this has been their plan from the very beginning. Now, Judge Napolitano, he is out there and he's saying, listen, we have to be very, very careful about censorship, about removing statues, saying that you can't read these books because they're part of the history of the Confederacy. He says the First Amendment restrains the government. It reads, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. And basically what we see government doing right now, certain individuals in government, well, they want to ban certain things. They want to hide certain things. They don't want people to say certain things. I mean, Facebook, YouTube, those are private corporations. The Constitution really doesn't apply to private corporations the way it does to government. I mean, is it in the best interest of the people to hide certain things? And I know, yes, YouTube is doing this. I see it all over the place. They're demonetizing like crazy. They're taking down videos. And you can see they have their new terms of service where they're basically deciding that we're going to push certain, sites down, certain videos down, and only show what we want to show. And again, this is a form of censorship, and we have to see, and we have to understand, where is this all coming from? Well, it's coming from those people who are in control. Now, when these companies do this, there's going to be a lot of people out there saying, well, this isn't right. And you're going to see new sites, new organizations start up that are going to compete against us. We've seen this in the past. This is nothing new. But what the judge is saying is that hate speech or censorship, which would you rather have? And he says censorship is worse. Because what do you censor? Hate speech right now, well, you can deal with that. And also the Constitution says free speech. Doesn't matter if it's hate, positive, it makes no difference. At least with the hate speech, you can challenge it. You can expose it. If you censor it, those people move underground. You don't know who they are. And you can't basically challenge it. And again, who's deciding what is hateful, what is not, what is good, what is not? It's a very slippery slope. And again, you don't have to agree with hate speech. Actually, when there is hate speech, it's actually better that it's out in the open, because you can go and you can challenge it, you can talk about it. I'm not going to say you're going to be able to make it go away, but you can expose it and you can show these individuals for what they really are. Now, what's very interesting is that all these government officials, they're starting with the statues. And it reminds me of the poem from Martin Niemöller, where he says, first they came for the socialists. I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And this was written back during World War II, during the Nazi occupation. And if you just replace some of the words with, first they came for the statues, you can see where we are headed. Now, what's very interesting is that this individual, Ian Much, he put up the obituary, the sad passing of common sense. And when I listen to all these individuals today, it looks like common sense, well, it completely disappeared. And let me just read a little bit of this. Today we mourn the passing of beloved old friend, Common Sense, who has been with us for many years. No one knows for sure how old he was, since his birth records were long ago lost in bureaucratic red tape. He will be remembered as having cultivated such valuable lessons as knowing when to come in out of the rain, why the early bird gets the worm. Life isn't always fair, and maybe it was my fault. Common sense lived by simple, sound financial policies. Don't spend more than you earn, and reliable parenting, adults, not children, are in charge. His health began to deteriorate rapidly when well-intentioned but overbearing regulations were set in place. Reports of a 6-year-old boy charged with sexual harassment for kissing a classmate. Teenagers suspended from school for using mouthwash after lunch, and a teacher fired for reprimanding an unruly student only worsened his condition. Common sense lost ground when parents attacked teachers for doing the job they had themselves failed to do in disciplining their unruly children. It declined even further when schools were required to get parental consent to administer paracetamol, sun lotion, or plaster to a pupil, but could not inform parents when a pupil became pregnant and wanted to have an abortion. Common sense lost the will to live as the Ten Commandments became contraband. Churches became businesses and criminals received better treatment than their victims. Common sense took a beating when you couldn't defend yourself from a burglar in your own home, but the burglar could sue you for assault because you protected yourself and your own. Common sense finally gave up the will to live after a woman failed to realize that a steaming cup of coffee was hot. She spilled a little on her lap and was promptly awarded a huge settlement. Common sense was preceded in death by his parents. Trust, his wife. Discretion, his daughter. Responsibility, and his son, reason. He is survived by 3 stepbrothers. I know my rights, someone else is to blame, and I am a victim. Not many attend his funeral because so few realize that he was gone. If you still remember him, pass this on. If not, join the majority and do nothing. Author unknown. And you can see today, common sense is gone. People aren't even thinking anymore. They're not even investigating or looking into anything. They're just going with what they hear. And they're going out there and doing crazy things. Instead of saying, you know something? Maybe we should have a rational discussion. But if you think about this, and we've talked about this before, the elite, the deep state, they're like the Siths in Star Wars. And if you don't know what that is, you're going to have to watch Star Wars movies, where they deal in absolutes. They don't see the gray areas. It's either black or white. You do it our way, or there's war. That's what we're seeing today. Now, the Japanese, they're saying that they need to bolster their missile defense system with the US Aegis Ashore system because of North Korea. Tokyo, well, it plans to increase its number of Aegis-equipped destroyers. The Japanese Defense Ministry will include costs related to the Aegis Ashore system when drafting their new budget. And we can see right now they are building this up because they are, first of all, pushing the idea that North Korea is going to be attacking. We know that there's a drill going on, and they're saying that this was pre-planned. But again, it was pre-planned to provoke North Korea. It's the Ulchi Freedom Guardian War Games. And this is the world's largest computerized command and control exercises. There's about 30,000 U.S. soldiers and more than 50,000 South Korean troops taking part in this. Japan is also taking part in this. And we have, nuclear-capable aircraft flyovers. They're flying over very close to North Korea. And basically, it's trying to provoke North Korea into doing something. This was why this was created. They do this quite a bit. The elite like to provoke other countries into doing something. Now, there has been a leaked UN report, and the leaked United Nations report finds that Saudi Arabia has massacred thousands of children in Yemen since the start of their campaign. Now, we've been reporting on this for quite a while, where the Saudis are using paid mercenaries, and this is backed up by the US, the deep state, to go into Yemen because Saudi Arabia needs their oil. They wanted to put in place the puppet government because he was thrown out of the country. And right now, this is coming from the Foreign Policy, they published a report based on its possession of a leaked 41-page draft from a UN document, which found that Saudi Arabia and its partner coalition allies in Yemen, the United States, are being guilty of horrific war crimes, including bombing of dozens of schools, hospitals, and civilian infrastructure. Now, the UN report identifies that air attacks were the cause of over half of all children casualties, with at least 349 children killed and 333 children injured. And the UN verified a total of about 2,000 or so youngsters killed and injured in Yemen. Now, last year, Saudi Arabia was briefly added to the UN's blacklist of state and non-state entities involved in mass killing of children. But, according to Foreign Policy, Saudi Arabia threatened to stage a walkout by Arab countries from the UN and slash hundreds of millions in aid to the international body's anti-poverty program unless the coalition was removed from a UN rogue list. And the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon folded. He was blackmailed into basically removing Saudi Arabia from the list. So they threatened the UN, and the UN decided to do this. Now, I'm not saying the UN is a great body of individuals where they're doing the right thing, but they knew what was going on in Yemen, and they took the easy way out, just like most of all these politicians do. They always take the easy way out. And we can see that, yes, the United States, the deep state, the elite, Saudi Arabia, and all these countries that basically fund the Al-Qaeda terrorist group, the Islamic State, Boko Haram, Al-Shem, and the rest, they use these paid mercenary forces for horrific acts. They destroy the country, they destroy the infrastructure, they make the people pay until they give. This is what they do. And it's funny that the people in the United States, no one is outraged by the war crimes that have been committed in Libya against women and children and families. How we were tricked into going into these different countries like Iraq because they had weapons of mass destruction, which never existed. I mean, shouldn't we all be questioning and having protests against that? But of course, that's hidden. The corporate media doesn't report on that because they say we're spreading democracy. No, we're spreading destruction. We're ripping families apart. We're destroying nations. That's what we should be protesting. That's what Americans should be rallying together and saying, why did we do this? But instead, they have us fighting against each other. Now, Syria is calling on the UN to force the United States and its allies to cease bombing civilians. They've gone to the UN and they're saying, listen, we're filing this report that the U.S. and the coalition forces, they are committing war crimes in Syria. And they have the proof. We see that Russia, Turkey, and Iran, they're working on de-escalation zones in Syria. Right now it is in Idlib. And as the Syrian forces, the Russian forces continually move forward, they're moving from west to east, they are basically setting up de-escalation zones in every single area because they're liberating a lot of cities, a lot of towns. And right now, Syria is saying, listen, the war is almost over in Syria. They're already setting up and bringing in Chinese investment, Russian investment. They're getting ready to rebuild in all these different areas. The refugees are pouring back into Syria. And if we can do this with other nations, and we know that Libya is calling on Russia, we see other countries are calling on Russia to come in and help the situation, to get rid of the terrorist groups, because what is happening right now, and we mentioned this before, the world is changing. The world is waking up saying, wait a minute, Russia was able to get rid of the terrorist groups while the United States spent years and years and years and couldn't do anything. So they're saying, you know something? We'd rather have Russia and China help us than the United States. And this is what is happening, and most of the Middle Eastern countries are saying, we don't want the United States in our country anymore. We see there was another terrorist attack in Barcelona, Spain, and once again, the chaos continues. A van hit, many different individuals. Some people were injured, some people died, and we can see from here in the United States, like Wolf Blitzer, he's saying, ooh, look, a copycat terrorist attack, just like the one in Charlottesville. And they're trying to basically bring this all in. But this is all chaos, which we expected to see. From now until Labor Day, the elite are going to push their agenda like you've never seen before, because this is the time period they love to play in. And we can see right now that they're not going to give up. Now, very interestingly, Russia extended a hand to Spain saying, listen, if you need help combating terrorism, we will provide professionals that will help with your problem. And Russia is doing this to many countries because many of the countries have seen that they are very successful in combating terrorism. And they get to the root of the problem and they get rid of the terrorists. And we can see that this is going to be a major problem from the United States. Remember, the world is changing right now. The world sees what the elite have been doing for all these years. And this is the last push that the elite pretty much have right now, because the Russian collusion thing is out the window. They need to get rid of Trump. They need to get back into power. They need someone in that seat. And I don't think they're going to stop with impeachment. I don't know how far that's going to get, but they're going to push this as hard as they possibly can. And I think the last thing they'll try, just like they did with Kennedy, they will try to assassinate the president, because that's all they'll have left. They won't be able to use anything else, because as time goes on and people start to forget, people start to talk, you can only keep the propaganda going for so long. Yes, they might be able to keep it going for a couple of weeks, but eventually people start to say, I'm getting tired of this. I don't want to keep this up. Even though the corporate media will keep going and going and going. It's almost like the Russian collusion thing. They kept going, but people started to lose interest. They didn't care anymore. The same thing is going to happen with Charlottesville, with removing the Confederate statues, moving all the names, and doing all this. Eventually what happens is people get tired. They go back to their lives. They stop listening, because it just sounds like a broken record after a while. And when this dies down, this is when people need to get nervous, because I do believe that they will get to the point where they can't take it anymore. And I'm talking about the elite, where they will try to assassinate the president. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.